My parents were sitting on a beach in Santorini, drinking champagne, while my 8-year-old daughter was lying unconscious in an operating room fighting for her life. I knew because I saw the photograph. My mother had posted it herself. And underneath it, while surgeons were trying to save my little girl, she had written, "Finally getting the vacation we deserve. No stress, no drama." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not because they went on vacation, not even because they refused to come. It was because, for the first time in my life, I understood exactly how little my daughter and I meant to them. And what they didn't know was that while my daughter was recovering, I would make one quiet decision that would eventually cost them everything they had spent years assuming was theirs. My daughter's name is Lily. She was 8 years old when everything changed. She had always been a small child. Not sickly, not fragile, just little. She had enormous brown eyes, a crooked smile, and this habit of concentrating so intensely when she drew that she would stick the tip of her tongue slightly between her lips. She loved horses. She loved pancakes. She hated tomatoes with an almost personal level of disgust. And whenever she was nervous, she would grab 2 fingers of my hand and squeeze them 3 times. That was our signal. 3 squeezes meant, "I'm scared." 3 squeezes back meant, "I'm here." I was 38 years old, divorced, and raising Lily on my own. Her father, Mark, had moved 3 states away after our divorce, and gradually became one of those people who always had a reason why he couldn't make it. A work emergency, a flight problem, a new relationship, a scheduling conflict. Eventually, Lily stopped asking when he was coming. That hurt more than any argument we'd ever had. But I had learned not to build my life around people who kept demonstrating that they weren't going to show up. My parents were different, or at least I thought they were. My father, Robert Barrett, was 71. My mother, Elaine, was 68. They lived about 40 minutes from us in a beautiful 2-story house surrounded by mature oak trees. They were financially comfortable, very comfortable. My grandfather had built a manufacturing company that had eventually been sold, and some of that money had been placed into a family trust. My father managed it. There were investments, properties, and accounts that generated enough income that nobody in our family had ever really worried about money. At least, nobody except me. I had inherited some assets from my grandmother, but most of my own wealth came from years of working. I had started a small interior design business in my 20s. It grew slowly, then it grew quickly. By 35, I was doing extremely well. I wasn't a billionaire. I wasn't even close. But I had enough. Enough to own my house outright. Enough to put money aside for Lily. Enough that, if something terrible happened, I could take care of her. And enough that my parents had always assumed that eventually, a significant portion of my estate would return to the family trust. They never said it directly. They didn't have to. In our family, money was discussed through implication. My father would say things like, "Family assets should stay in the family." My mother would say, "It's important to think about the next generation." And whenever I mentioned that Lily would inherit everything from me someday, my mother would smile and say, "Of course she will, although hopefully you'll make sensible arrangements." I never understood what she meant. Until Lily got sick. It started on a Tuesday morning. She complained about stomach pain. At first I assumed it was a stomach bug. She sat at the kitchen table pushing cereal around her bowl. "Mom? Yeah? My tummy hurts." I walked over and placed my hand against her forehead. "No fever. You want to stay home?" She nodded. So I canceled my morning appointments. By noon, she was curled up on the couch. By 3, she was crying. That scared me. Lily wasn't a dramatic child. She could fall off her bike, scrape her knee, and calmly ask for a Band-Aid. But that afternoon, she was trembling. "Mommy," she whispered. I immediately grabbed my keys. We're going to the hospital. She squeezed my fingers 3 times. I squeezed back. I'm here. At the emergency room, everything happened fast. Too fast. Blood tests. Imaging. Doctors speaking quietly outside the room. A nurse asking me questions I could barely process. When the surgeon finally came in, he closed the door behind him. I remember that. The soft click of the door. I remember looking at his face, and I remember thinking, people don't close doors when they're about to give you good news. He sat beside me. Mrs. Barrett, your daughter has a serious intestinal obstruction. I stared at him. What does that mean? She needs surgery. My mouth went dry. Tonight? Yes. How serious? He paused. Very serious if we don't intervene quickly. I felt the floor disappear beneath me. My daughter was 8. 8. She still slept with a stuffed rabbit. She still believed the moon followed our car. She still asked me to check underneath her bed before turning off the light. And suddenly someone was telling me she might not make it through the night without surgery. I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring. Diana? Mom. Something in my voice must have changed her tone. What happened? It's Lily. Silence. I explained everything. The obstruction, the surgery, the risks, the fact that I was terrified. At the end, I said, Mom, can you come? She exhaled. Tonight? Yes. Diana, your father and I leave tomorrow morning. I blinked. For where? Greece? I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't understand the sentence. You're going to Greece tomorrow? We've been planning this for months. Mom, Lily needs emergency surgery. I understand. No, I don't think you do. My voice cracked. She could die. Another silence. Then my mother said the sentence I would replay thousands of times. Diana, hospitals have doctors. You're her mother. You need to be strong. I closed my eyes. I'm asking you to come. And I'm telling you that we're leaving in the morning. Mom, we'll call you. Then she hung up. I sat there staring at the phone. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A monitor beeped somewhere behind me. A woman was crying at the end of the hallway. And I realized I was completely alone. I called my father. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then he sent a text. Can't talk. Packing. Your mother is upset. We'll check in tomorrow. I stared at those words. We'll check in tomorrow. My daughter might not be alive tomorrow. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked back into Lily's room. She was lying under a thin hospital blanket. Her eyes were half closed. Mom? I sat beside her. I'm here. Is it bad? I swallowed. No. It was a lie. Are you scared? She nodded. I took her hand. She squeezed my fingers 3 times. I squeezed back. I'm here. That night, I sat beside the operating room for almost 4 hours. 4 hours of white walls. 4 hours of vending machine coffee. 4 hours of watching strangers walk past me while my entire world was somewhere behind a locked door. At 2:17 a.m., the surgeon finally appeared. I stood so quickly my chair hit the wall. He smiled. The surgery went well. My knees nearly gave out. She'll need monitoring, but we got to her in time. I started crying. Not quietly, not gracefully. I covered my face and sobbed. The surgeon put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing bringing her in? I couldn't answer, because all I could think was, thank God, thank God, thank God. At 6:40 that morning, Lily woke up. Her eyes were barely open. Mommy? I leaned over her. I'm here. Her fingers moved weakly. 3 squeezes. I squeezed back. 3. I love you, I whispered. She smiled, and for the first time since the emergency began, I allowed myself to breathe. Then my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I opened the message. Hope everything is okay. Boarding now. We'll talk when we land. Love you. I stared at it. There was no apology, no question asking whether Lily was alive. No, how did the surgery go? Just boarding now. I put my phone face down. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were scared. Maybe my mother didn't know what to say. Maybe my father was overwhelmed. Maybe there was an explanation. I wanted there to be one. Because accepting the truth meant accepting something much uglier. That my parents had chosen a vacation over their granddaughter's life. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The next morning, I finally posted a short update online. Nothing dramatic. Just, Lily made it through surgery. She's stable and recovering. Thank you to everyone who reached out. Within minutes, friends started responding. Then relatives. Then people from my business. Then someone I barely knew wrote, "Sending prayers. I hope your parents are with you." I froze. I hadn't told anyone they weren't. I didn't answer. 20 minutes later, my mother posted a photograph. I clicked it, and there they were. My parents. Standing on a beach in Santorini. My mother wore a white linen dress. My father held 2 champagne glasses. The sea behind them was impossibly blue. The caption said, "After a stressful year, we're finally getting some peace. Family drama can wait." I stared at the screen. Then I noticed the timestamp. The photo had been taken that morning, while Lily was still in intensive care. My hands began to shake. I zoomed in. My mother was smiling. My father was smiling. They looked happy, relaxed, free, as if nothing in the world was wrong. And suddenly something inside me became very, very quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't call them. I didn't comment. I simply closed the app. Then I looked at Lily sleeping beside me. Her face was pale. Her tiny hand rested on the blanket. And I made myself a promise. Not revenge. Not yet. Just a promise. I would never again confuse being related to someone with being loved by them. Lily spent 9 days in the hospital. 9. By the 3rd day, she was improving. By the 5th, she was eating small amounts of food. By the 7th, she was sitting up. But every time she moved, I watched her face. Every win felt fragile. The first time she laughed after surgery, I cried. She looked at me like I was crazy. "Mom, why are you crying?" "Because you laughed." She smiled. "You're weird." "Probably." She squeezed my hand twice. Not our usual 3, just twice. But I understood. She was okay. And I was grateful. More grateful than I had ever been for anything in my life. My parents returned from Greece 12 days after the surgery. They didn't come to the hospital. They didn't call. They sent flowers. Expensive ones. There were white roses, lilies, orchids, and a card. So relieved everything worked out. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the arrangement for a long time. Then I moved it to the hallway. I couldn't stand looking at it. 3 days later, my mother called. "Diana." "Hi. How is Lily?" "Recovering." "Good." Silence. Then she said, "We've been thinking." That sentence immediately made my stomach tighten. "About what?" "The trust." I closed my eyes. "Of course." "What about it?" "Your father thinks we should update some of the arrangements." "Okay." "There are certain protections in place for family assets." "I know. And considering everything that's happened lately, we think it's important that you don't make any emotional financial decisions." I stared out the window. "Mom, what exactly are you saying?" "We're saying that you've been under tremendous stress." "So?" "So you shouldn't be making major changes to your estate right now." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You think I can't make decisions because my daughter got sick?" "No one said that. You just did." "Diana, don't be difficult." There it was. That familiar phrase. Don't be difficult. It had been used against me since childhood. Whenever I questioned my father, whenever I disagreed with my mother, whenever I refused to do what my older brother wanted. Don't be difficult. Be grateful. Family comes first. Keep the peace. Those phrases had trained me to doubt myself. But something had changed. I wasn't 16 anymore. I was 38. I had a daughter. And I'd spent 9 nights watching my child fight for her life while my parents drank champagne on another continent. So I said, I want copies of every document connected to my trust. Silence. Why? Because they're mine. They're family documents. Then it shouldn't be a problem. My mother became cold. Your father manages those accounts. I know. You're being paranoid. No. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. I'm being careful. She hung up. That evening, I called an attorney. Her name was Melissa Grant. She had represented me on a business acquisition 2 years earlier. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she asked, Do you want to change your estate plan? I don't know. That isn't what I asked. I looked down at my hands. Yes. She paused. Because you're angry? No. Because you're afraid? I thought about that. Then I said, Because I'm finally paying attention. She smiled faintly. That's a better reason. We met the following week. I brought every document I had. Melissa reviewed them for hours. Then she looked at me. Diana, you understand how much you're worth? Yes. I don't think you do. She slid a folder toward me. My assets were substantial. The family trust alone had grown significantly over the years. There were investment accounts, real estate, stocks, private holdings, insurance policies, business interests. And because I had never married after my divorce, Lily was currently the primary beneficiary of almost everything. But there was a problem. My parents were trustees over several family-held assets, not because I needed them to be, because decades earlier, my grandfather had structured things that way. Melissa explained that I had options. I could remove them from certain roles. I could amend my estate plan. I could establish an independent trustee. I could create a charitable foundation. I could restructure distributions. I could make sure Lily's inheritance was protected if something happened to me. I listened. Then I asked, What happens if I leave everything to a foundation? Melissa looked at me. You can. Would my parents get anything? Not unless you give them something. I nodded. That night I barely slept. I walked through the house at 2 a.m. The hallway was dark. Lily's bedroom door was slightly open. I stood there watching her sleep. She had one leg sticking out from under the blanket. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked beneath her chin. I thought about my parents, about my mother telling me hospitals had doctors, about my father texting that he was too busy packing, about that photograph. And then I realized something. My parents had spent years assuming my money would eventually become family money. They had assumed that because we shared blood, they had a claim on my future. But my daughter had shown me something. Money wasn't a family. Presence was. Love was. Sacrifice was. Showing up was. And if my parents didn't understand that, I couldn't teach them with an argument. I had to teach them with consequences. 2 weeks later, my mother invited us to dinner. I almost said no. Then I decided to go. Not because I wanted reconciliation, because I wanted to see them clearly. Lily was still recovering, so she stayed with a friend. I arrived at my parents' house at 6:55. My father opened the door. Diana. Dad. He hugged me. I stood stiffly. You look tired, he said. I am? My mother appeared behind him. Come in. Dinner was already on the table. Roast chicken, potatoes, wine, Everything looked normal. Too normal. I sat down. My mother poured wine. I hope you're not still upset about Greece. I looked at her. I am. She sighed. We've discussed this. No, we haven't. Diana, you told me you had a vacation. Yes. My daughter was having emergency surgery. And she survived. My jaw tightened. Yes. So what are we fighting about? I stared at her. I couldn't believe she'd said it. What are we fighting about? She spread her hands. She's okay. I felt something inside me go numb. Then my father spoke. Your mother means that you shouldn't hold on to resentment. I laughed softly. You both went to Greece. We had already paid. You could have canceled. We would have lost the money. I looked at them. Then I asked, how much did the trip cost? My mother frowned. Why? How much? 20,000 perhaps. I nodded. $20,000. They had been unwilling to lose $20,000. But I had spent the entire week sitting beside my daughter's hospital bed, wondering whether I would lose her. I pushed my chair back. My mother looked startled. Where are you going? Home. We haven't finished dinner. I have. My father stood. Diana, don't make a scene. I looked directly at him. I haven't made a scene. Then I walked out. That was the last time I had dinner with my parents. But it wasn't the last time they would hear from me. 3 weeks later, Melissa called. The documents are ready. I went to her office. She had prepared everything. New trustees, updated beneficiaries, asset protections, a charitable structure, and a document that made my hands tremble when I read it. My parents were removed from my estate. Completely. No trust distributions, no inheritance, no authority, no access, nothing. I stared at the page. Are you sure? Melissa nodded. You asked me to draft it. I know. You can still change your mind. I looked through the window. People were walking down the sidewalk. Cars passed. Someone was laughing outside a coffee shop. The world hadn't changed, but mine had. I picked up the pen and signed. One document, then another, then another. Every signature felt strangely calm. There was no dramatic music, no lightning, no satisfying explosion. Just ink, paper, a quiet room, and the realization that revenge didn't always feel like anger. Sometimes revenge felt like finally closing a door that should have been closed years ago. But I wasn't finished, because I had an idea that would make sure my parents couldn't simply replace the inheritance with another expectation. I wanted my money to go somewhere they could never claim it, somewhere that represented the exact thing they had failed to understand. Children, families, medical care, second chances. So I told Melissa, I don't want the money to disappear. She looked up. What do you want to do with it? I smiled. I want to give it to children like Lily. And that was when the revenge became something much bigger than taking money away from my parents. I was going to make sure every dollar they thought they were entitled to became a reminder of what they had chosen not to do. The foundation took months. I called it the Lily Barrett Pediatric Health Foundation. Lily didn't know at first. I wanted to wait. I worked with lawyers, accountants, medical professionals, and nonprofit advisors. The goal was simple: help families facing pediatric medical emergencies, transportation, temporary housing, hospital meal assistance, emergency grants, medical equipment, anything that could keep a parent from having to choose between sitting beside their child and paying their rent. The first time I toured a children's hospital as part of the foundation planning, I cried in the parking lot. There were parents sleeping in chairs, mothers eating vending machine dinners, fathers pacing hallways, families who had driven 6 hours because the local hospital couldn't handle their child's condition. I thought about my own 9 nights. Then I thought about my parents in Greece. And for the first time, The anger became smaller, not gone, just smaller. Because I realized what I was building was more important than what I was taking away. Still, my parents didn't know. They assumed I was cooling off. My mother began sending messages. We should talk. Then, family shouldn't stay divided. Then, your father misses you. I didn't respond. Eventually, she called. I answered. Diana. Yes. Are you still angry? No. There was a pause. Really? No. She sounded relieved. Then perhaps we can move forward. I almost smiled. We can. Good. I've moved forward. What does that mean? It means my life is moving in a different direction. She became quiet. Are you seeing someone? No. Is this about your father? No. Then what? I said. I'm restructuring my estate. Silence. Then. What? My estate. Why? Because I want to. Diana, this is exactly what I was worried about. What? You're making emotional decisions. I leaned back in my chair. No. Then why are you changing everything? Because I have a daughter. She'll inherit from you. Yes. Then what's the issue? The issue is that I don't want family wealth treated like an automatic inheritance. My mother's voice sharpened. Are you saying your father and I don't deserve anything? I answered honestly. Yes. She inhaled sharply. I cannot believe you. I can. After everything we've done for you? I almost laughed. What have you done for me? We raised you. You did. We supported your business. Sometimes. We gave you opportunities. Yes. And now you're punishing us because of one vacation? I closed my eyes. It wasn't one vacation. Then what was it? It was the moment I needed you. Silence. I continued. And you weren't there. We couldn't be there. You chose not to be. We had plans. You chose your plans. We had paid for them. You chose $20,000. That's unfair. No. My voice remained calm. What's unfair is expecting me to spend my entire life believing family means something when you showed me it doesn't. She hung up. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. The next morning, my father called. His tone was completely different. Cold. Businesslike. Your mother tells me you're changing the estate. Yes. You don't understand the implications. I do. The family trust was established to preserve generational wealth. I know. Your grandfather wanted this money kept within the family. My grandfather isn't making this decision. You're destroying what he built. No. I looked at the foundation paperwork sitting on my desk. I'm changing what it means. He laughed bitterly. You think giving money away makes you noble? No. Then what do you think it makes you? I looked down at the photograph of Lily on my desk. 8 years old. Missing one front tooth. Holding a drawing of a horse. I said, available. He didn't understand. Available for children who need it. There was a long silence. Then he said, you'll regret this. Maybe. You're throwing away your family's future. No. I smiled. I'm choosing it. He hung up. The hardest part wasn't signing the paperwork. It was telling Lily. One Saturday afternoon, we sat at the kitchen table. She was coloring. I said, Lily? I want to tell you something. She looked up. Are you okay? Yes. Is Grandma okay? That question broke my heart. I took her hand. Grandma and Grandpa and I aren't going to see each other as much anymore. She looked confused. Why? Sometimes adults don't treat each other the way they should. Are you mad? I thought about it. I was. Are you now? I smiled. Not really. Why? Because I decided to do something good. She tilted her head. What? I told her about the foundation. I explained that some children get very sick, and their parents have to worry about money at the same time. She was quiet. Then she asked, "Like me?" "Yes." She looked down at her coloring book. "Can we help them?" I felt tears burn my eyes. "Yes." She smiled. "Then that's good. Kids are incredible. They can take something adults turn into a war and reduce it to one simple question. Can we help?" 6 months after Lily's surgery, the foundation held its first small fundraising event. There were doctors, nurses, local business owners, parents, community leaders. I didn't invite my parents. I didn't need to. But someone else did. My mother's sister, Margaret. She had always been kind to me. She approached me during the event. "Diana?" "Hi, Aunt Margaret." She hugged me. Then she whispered, "Your parents know." I smiled. "Know what?" "About the foundation." I nodded. "How?" "Your mother found out through one of the attorneys." I sighed. Margaret looked uncomfortable. "She says you're humiliating them." I looked around the room. A nurse was speaking to a family. A father was holding his sleeping toddler. A little boy was laughing near the dessert table. "I'm not humiliating anyone." Margaret nodded. "I know." Then she asked, "Did you really remove them from everything?" "Yes." "All of it?" "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "Your mother is furious." I expected that. "Your father says he's going to challenge it." I smiled. "He can try." "Are you scared?" I looked at the children. No. Because the truth was, I wasn't. Not anymore. I had spent my whole childhood afraid of disappointing my parents, afraid of being called selfish, afraid of being difficult, afraid of being ungrateful. Then, Lily almost died, and suddenly those fears seemed very small. The legal challenge came 2 months later. My parents' attorney sent a letter questioning my capacity to make certain estate decisions. I read it twice, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. Melissa had anticipated it. Every document had been properly executed. Every decision had been reviewed. Every beneficiary change was legal. I had been medically competent. I had been financially competent. I had been fully informed. There was no loophole. My parents had one argument. They believed I had acted out of spite. But being angry didn't make a legal decision invalid. And I hadn't merely removed them. I had redirected the assets into a legitimate charitable structure. The money wasn't going to me. It wasn't going to some secret account. It was going to children. The lawsuit disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. But the damage to my relationship with them was permanent. Then something happened that I never expected. My father called me. Not angry, not threatening, just tired. "Diana." "Yes?" "I want to see Lily." I closed my eyes. "Why?" "Because she's my granddaughter." "You've always been her grandfather." "I know." "You didn't come when she needed you." "I know." "Why now?" Silence. Then he said, "Because I realize I made a mistake." My heart tightened. Part of me wanted to believe him. That was the dangerous part. Because underneath everything, I was still his daughter. I still wanted my father to say he was proud of me. I still wanted my mother to hug me and mean it. I still wanted the childhood version of myself to finally hear, "You were enough." But I had learned something. An apology wasn't always an invitation. Sometimes it was simply an acknowledgement. So I told him, "I need time." He said, "I understand." And for the first time in years, I believed him. Then came the moment that changed everything. 1 year after Lily's surgery, the foundation announced its largest initiative. We were funding emergency family housing near 3 children's hospitals. 24 apartments, free for families whose children were undergoing long-term treatment. At the press conference, Lily stood beside me. She wore a blue dress. Her hair was braided. She was nervous. I squeezed her hand 3 times. She squeezed back. A reporter asked me, Why did you create this foundation? I looked at Lily, then at the cameras, and I said, because when your child is sick, the only thing you should have to worry about is whether they're going to get better. The room went silent. I continued. No parent should have to wonder where they're going to sleep, how they'll afford a meal, or whether they can stay beside their child. Lily looked up at me. I smiled, and I knew then that my parents' absence had become something useful. Their failure had become someone else's second chance. That was the revenge I wanted. Not their suffering, their irrelevance. My parents learned the full details of my estate plan 3 weeks after the press conference. My mother called me. I almost didn't answer. I did. Diana. Yes. You've given everything away. No. You know what I mean. I've redirected it. You've given away the family fortune. It's my fortune. It came from your grandfather. Some of it. And the rest? I earned. She was breathing heavily. You can't do this. I already did. Your father is devastated. I said nothing. Do you understand what this means? Yes. No. You don't. What does it mean, Mom? It means your daughter won't have the security she deserves. I looked down the hallway. Lily was doing homework. She had a pencil tucked behind her ear. I smiled. She'll have security. From a charity? From me. What happens when you're gone? She'll be protected. And after that? After that, she'll have the foundation. My mother laughed bitterly. You really think money makes people good? No? Then why are you doing this? I answered. Because money can give good people a chance. She became quiet. Then she said, I hope you're happy. I looked around my house. At Lily. At the framed photograph of her after surgery. At the foundation papers. At the life I had built. I am? She hung up. 6 months later, my father passed away. A heart attack. I received the call at 5:18 in the morning. For several minutes, I just sat on the edge of my bed. I felt numb. Whatever had happened between us, he had still been my father. I cried. I went to the funeral. My mother looked older. Much older. She stood beside the coffin. When she saw me, she didn't speak. Neither did I. I sat in the back. After the service, she approached me. I didn't think you'd come. He was my father. She nodded. Then she whispered. He regretted it. What? Greece. I looked at her. He regretted not coming. I swallowed. Did he ever tell you? Many times. I closed my eyes. There was a strange ache in my chest. Not forgiveness? Not exactly. Just grief for something that could never be repaired. My mother reached for my hand. I let her. For 3 seconds. Then I pulled away. She looked at me. I lost your father. I know. I don't want to lose you too. I wanted to say, then you should have shown up when I needed you. But I didn't. Because I was tired. So I said, I don't want to lose you either. Her eyes filled with tears. But things have to be different. She nodded. I know. That was the closest we ever came to reconciliation. A year later, the foundation had helped more than 1,000 families. Some received emergency grants, some received housing, some received transportation, some received medical equipment. One mother wrote me a letter. Her son had been diagnosed with leukemia. She had been sleeping in her car. The foundation gave her a temporary apartment near the hospital. She wrote, You gave me the ability to be a mother instead of a woman constantly calculating how much longer I could survive. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I cried. Because I finally understood. My parents had thought I was destroying a fortune. I wasn't. I was turning it into something alive. Lily is older now. She's healthy. She still loves horses. She still hates tomatoes. And she still squeezes my fingers 3 times when she's nervous. Sometimes she asks about my parents. I don't lie to her. I tell her, people can love you and still fail you. She thinks about that, then asks, can you forgive them? I tell her, yes. Did you? I smile. I'm trying. She nods. That's good. Then she goes back to whatever she's doing. Children don't need elaborate explanations. They need honesty. They need safety. They need someone who stays. And I stayed. That was the part that mattered. My mother died 4 years after my father. We had made peace by then. Not the kind of peace you see in movies. We didn't suddenly become best friends. We didn't pretend nothing happened. We simply stopped fighting. She attended one foundation event. She watched Lily speak. Afterward, she came up to me. I was wrong, she said. I looked at her. About what? She smiled sadly. About what family means. I didn't know what to say. She touched Lily's shoulder. I should have been there. Lily looked at her. You should have. My mother began crying. Lily hugged her. I stood there watching. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired, human, free. My mother passed away quietly in her sleep several years later. When the attorney read her will, there was nothing for me. I didn't expect anything. But there was a letter. A handwritten one. It said, Diana, I spent years believing family meant preserving what belonged to us. You taught me that family means showing up. I wish I had learned that sooner. Mom, I kept the letter, not because it changed the past. It didn't. But because sometimes closure isn't getting the apology you wanted. Sometimes it's finally realizing you no longer need it. Today, the foundation is much larger than I ever imagined. There are programs in multiple states. The first family housing project now has a waiting list. The hospital where Lily had surgery still has a plaque with her name on it. She hates that. She says, Mom, why does my name have to be on everything? I tell her, because you're the reason. She rolls her eyes. I'm going to school. I laugh. Fine. Then she smiles and squeezes my fingers 3 times. I squeeze back. 3 times. I'm here. That's the entire story. Not the money, not the inheritance, not Greece, not the trust, not even the revenge. The real story is what happened when I finally stopped begging people to value me. For years, I thought revenge meant making someone hurt the way they hurt you. I don't believe that anymore. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's direction. It's taking the thing someone assumed they owned and using it to build something they can never control. My parents thought they were entitled to my future because they were my parents. They thought blood gave them ownership. It didn't. My money was mine. My decisions were mine. My daughter's future was mine to protect. And when they chose a beach over her hospital room, they didn't just lose an inheritance. They lost access to a daughter who had spent her entire life trying to earn their love. I didn't punish them. I simply stopped rewarding them. And somewhere in a children's hospital, a mother who doesn't know my name may be sitting beside her sick child tonight. Maybe she has a meal. Maybe she has a bed. Maybe she doesn't have to choose between paying rent and staying beside her baby. Maybe she gets one more night without fear. If that's what my money became, then I don't regret a single signature. Because the day Lily almost died, I learned something that changed me forever. People can tell you they love you. They can share your last name. They can sit at your holiday table. They can call themselves your family. But when the worst moment of your life arrives, what matters isn't who says they care. It's who walks through the door. And my parents didn't. So I built a life where the next frightened parent wouldn't have to face that door alone. That was my revenge. And it was the first revenge I ever took that made me feel completely at peace. If this story meant something to you, remember this. Sometimes the people who hurt you most don't realize what they've lost until you stop asking them to stay. And sometimes the most powerful way to win isn't to take everything from someone, it's to take what they thought was theirs and turn it into something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more stories of betrayal, justice, and revenge. And tell me in the comments, would you have cut your parents out after what happened to Lily? Because sometimes the hardest question isn't whether someone deserves forgiveness, it's whether they still deserve access to the life you worked so hard to build.